Flight attendant refused to let Undercover CEO board, first class, but instantly regrets it. Monica Webb had always dreamed of becoming a flight attendant, and at 27 years old, she had achieved her dream. She strutted down the glossy corridors of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, DFW, that sweltering summer afternoon. Uniform crisp, blonde hair pinned into a neat bun, stiletto heels clicking confidently against the polished floor. Working for American Airlines was, in her eyes, the ultimate achievement. She'd spent years perfecting a charming smile that hid her steel spine. Monica was known among her colleagues for her near-obsessive attention to detail, from how a passenger's drink was served to how their carry-on was stowed. Her impeccable grooming standards had made her a model for new flight attendants who tried desperately to emulate her polished demeanor. Yet, in private corners and hushed tones, many whispered that Monica was also a little too exacting. She'd once lectured a senior flight attendant about the angle at which a coffee cup should be placed on the tray table. Another time, she reported a junior colleague for forgetting a passenger's second request for water, resulting in a written warning for that co-worker. Monica believed that the airline's reputation, her own reputation, and indeed the entire passenger experience hinged upon absolute adherence to procedure. If you were an unkempt passenger, or tried to bend any policy, no matter how small, Monica would put you in your place. Her ambition to rise up the ranks within American Airlines was no secret. She'd confided in a few co-workers that she aimed to move from flight attendant to in-flight service manager, and perhaps one day to a corporate role. It was something of a running joke on the team that Monica was auditioning every day to be a top executive. So, as she neared the gate for Flight 2575 bound for Los Angeles, she was brimming with the typical excitement that pre-flight procedures brought her. The gate area was abuzz with passengers flipping through their phones, scanning boarding passes, and fidgeting with carry-on luggage. A small group of first-class passengers stood in a separate line near the roped-off priority area, chatting idly. Monica mentally prepared herself for the coming hours. She liked to think of this job as a performance. Every flight was a stage, and she'd deliver a spotless show. Little did she know, this performance would go down in American Airlines history, and not for the reasons she would have liked. Oliver Henderson stepped off his discreet black SUV onto the curb at DFW. At 45, Oliver had recently been appointed as the new CEO of American Airlines. He was something of an industry anomaly, an outsider hired from a successful tech conglomerate in Silicon Valley. The airline's board believed that Oliver's visionary approach, data-driven mindset, and reputation for turning companies around could help lead American Airlines into a new era of customer satisfaction and profitability. Many employees across the airline had heard rumors of their new chief executive, that he was approachable, that he loved to talk directly to staff, and that he had once, in a former job, disguised himself as a regular customer to see how patrons were treated in one of the tech company's retail stores. Those rumors were true. Oliver believed in seeing the front lines to understand the company he led, so he could fix its problems from the ground up, rather than relying on carefully curated data from managers who wanted to look good in reports. On this particular afternoon, Oliver wore a pair of dark jeans, a well-worn collared shirt, and comfortable sneakers outfits he typically favored outside the boardroom. He carried a single black duffel bag, looking more like a casual business traveler than the head of one of the world's largest airlines. No entourage, no special ID card displayed, just a single e-ticket on his phone that read, American Airlines Flight 2575, Coach Class. Oliver had no intention of staying in coach all the way to Los Angeles, but he wanted to see what it took for a regular passenger to obtain an upgrade. He wanted to watch the staff's reactions and ensure that frontline employees actually embodied the values the airline publicized: courtesy, customer-first thinking, and a willingness to go above and beyond. He didn't plan to reveal his identity right away. His corporate office had quietly arranged for him to be placed on a special list for an upgrade. No typical seat assignment was attached to his reservation. The gate agents had been informed that if a gentleman named Oliver Henderson requested a seat in first class, they were to oblige. What Oliver sought to learn was how the staff would respond to him if they didn't realize they were serving their new CEO. He believed in the old adage, character is what you do when no one is looking. When Oliver arrived at gate D34, he scanned the electronic boarding sign overhead that read, AA Flight 2575 to Los Angeles. On time. The gate area was half filled with passengers, some milling around, others sitting quietly. To the right stood a roped-off priority line for first class, executive platinum and premium passengers. Oliver took a breath, glancing at his phone to confirm the time. He had about 30 minutes before scheduled boarding. Spotting an empty seat, he settled in, popping in wireless earbuds and pretending to scroll through social media. Monica was busy running through the pre-boarding announcements and finalizing last-minute details with the gate agent, Casey Johnson, who recognized her from multiple flights. Casey gave Monica a friendly smile. "Ready for LAX? Looks like we've got a fully booked first-class cabin," she said, scanning the flight manifest. "Oh, I noticed," Monica replied. "We even have a couple of newly upgraded passengers in first. Everything's going to have to be by the book, especially with that VIP note we got from corporate." Casey tilted her head curiously. "What VIP note?" Monica shrugged. "All they told me was that there's a special passenger aboard today. Some code on the manifest indicates we might need to pay close attention. They didn't mention a name. My guess is it's just some frequent flyer with important status. Whatever, I'll keep an eye out." Casey nodded. "Let me know if you need anything." With that, Monica turned to greet the 2 or 3 passengers who had begun lining up in the priority lane, verifying they were indeed first-class travelers. She handed them pre-boarding tags for their carry-ons as if awarding them trophies. She glanced occasionally at the other passengers. Everyone else would get their turn, but in Monica's mind, first-class travelers had to be treated with an added layer of deference. They paid for a premium experience, she thought. They should get it. Meanwhile, Oliver, ever observant, noticed Monica's efficient stance, the way she held the iPad with the passenger list, and how she barely lifted her eyes to offer a polite smile to anyone not in the priority line. He overheard her reminding a family to please stand behind the rope until your boarding group is called. Nothing overtly rude, yet just mechanical and somewhat chilly. Let's see how this goes, he thought, taking mental notes. When early boarding was announced, Oliver rose and made his way toward the priority lane, noticing a small cluster of first-class passengers milling about. He smiled in greeting at a couple, the husband carrying a garment bag and the wife clutching a designer purse. He then stepped up to Monica, who was holding her device ready to check boarding passes. "I'm Oliver Henderson. I'm traveling with you on this flight. I believe there should be a notation on my ticket about an upgrade," he said calmly, tapping his phone to display the e-boarding pass. Monica took the phone, scanned it, and glanced at her iPad. She frowned. "I'm seeing that your ticket is booked in economy, seat 27B. The tone in her voice shifted, adopting a sharper edge. "We only allow first-class boarding for those who have paid for or been assigned first-class seats." Oliver kept his smile. "I was told by corporate there might be an upgrade. If you check the notes on the manifest, you'll see it's been pre-approved." She tapped the screen again, scanning the lines with growing impatience. "I see your name, Oliver Henderson, but there's no explicit note about an upgrade here." Now, Oliver was not about to use his position as CEO to barge through. He stuck to his plan. "Could you check with the gate agent or your supervisor? They should have instructions." Monica tilted her head condescendingly. "I am the lead flight attendant on this segment. I don't see any instructions here, and our first-class cabin is currently booked full." She pointed to a sign listing the names of confirmed upgrades. "If you truly had an upgrade, your name would be on that list, but it's not." Before Oliver could respond, she turned to the next passenger in line, effectively dismissing him. The couple waiting behind him looked at Oliver sympathetically, but he simply nodded, stepping aside quietly. Inside, Oliver felt a pang of disappointment. He wasn't upset that he wasn't recognized. He was upset that she immediately decided to treat him dismissively rather than double-check. This is exactly why I do these tests, he thought. Oliver decided to approach Casey at the gate agent desk. He offered a polite nod. "Excuse me, Ms. Johnson. I believe there's a corporate notation on my reservation for an upgrade. The flight attendant is telling me it's full, but I was told I'd be cleared." Casey took the phone from him, scanned it, and her eyes widened slightly. She peered more closely at her computer. "Oh, you're Mr. Henderson. Yes, I do see something from corporate. Oh, here we go. You're on what they call a priority list. However, it looks like the flight is fully booked in first. Normally, we'd still have some wiggle room. Let me check if there was a last-minute seat assignment that might be changed around." While Casey typed quickly, Monica returned to the desk, noticing Oliver speaking with her colleague. She felt a surge of annoyance. She disliked it when passengers tried to go around her. She crossed her arms as if ready to challenge. "Is there a problem, Casey?" Casey glanced at Monica. "It's Mr. Henderson here. He's got a special code from corporate for a first-class seat, but we're showing full up front. I need to see if the seat assignment in 1C was a late assignment or if it can be released." Monica made no effort to hide the displeasure in her tone. "Casey, we've already boarded half our first-class passengers. We can't just unseat someone. That would be a huge hassle. And it's not fair to those who paid top dollar for their seat." Oliver remained calm. "Perhaps we can find a workable solution. I don't want to cause trouble, but I was told by corporate—" Monica cut him off. "You've made that clear, sir. But rules are rules. If your name isn't explicitly on the first-class manifest, you can't just waltz up and claim an upgrade. I'm sure we can try to accommodate you on another flight if that's truly what corporate intended." Casey looked unsure, scanning her screen. She gave Oliver a sympathetic glance. "Let me just call my supervisor," she said softly. Oliver appreciated her diligence. She picked up a phone behind the desk and began speaking in hushed tones. Meanwhile, Monica turned back to Oliver. "Why don't you wait over there, Mr. Henderson? We have to help the rest of our passengers," she said, pointing to a row of seats in the waiting area. The irritation in her voice was evident. Oliver offered a polite nod and stepped back. He felt a tightness in his chest, not anger, but concern. If this was how staff treated regular passengers who had an unusual situation, how many potential paying customers had been turned away or dismissed? This is a systemic problem if this is normal, Oliver thought. We need to do better. Within minutes, the final pre-boarding announcements echoed through the gate area. Monica resumed her position at the head of the roped-off priority lane. Despite the tension, she remained every bit the professional on the surface, posture tall, voice soothing yet firm, uniform without a single wrinkle. She guided a few more first-class passengers onto the jet bridge. Among them was a well-dressed man with gold cufflinks who cast a curious glance at Oliver, who stood just outside the lane. Then came the general boarding calls for groups 1, 2, and 3. The lines thickened as people bustled to hand over their passes. Oliver, for now, was stuck. Casey was still on the phone, apparently on hold with her supervisor or with the corporate helpline. Meanwhile, the seats in first class were quickly filling. Oliver decided to let the majority of passengers board rather than cause a scene, so he waited patiently as the gate area emptied out. Finally, Casey hung up the phone and motioned for Oliver to approach. "It's confirmed you should be in first class. The corporate note was added at the last second, but it's valid. My supervisor said you absolutely can take seat 1C. We'll have to reassign the passenger we gave it to. Turns out he's an off-duty flight attendant who volunteered to sit in a jump seat if needed. That's the seat you're supposed to have." Relief crossed Oliver's face. "Thank you, Casey. I appreciate your diligence." Casey retrieved a new boarding pass from the printer and handed it to Oliver, a shy smile on her face. "Sorry about the confusion." Monica, overhearing, turned sharply. Her eyes narrowed. She had just been finishing up general boarding. She approached Casey and Oliver. "What do you mean he's taking 1C? That seat is spoken for." Casey squared her shoulders. "We cleared it with the supervisor, Mr. Henderson has a corporate note from HQ. 1C is his seat now. Monica's cheeks flushed ever so slightly. She'd never been overruled in front of a passenger before. "Fine, but next time please coordinate with me first," she said, casting Oliver an icy glare. She was about to walk away when she spun back toward Oliver. "Come on, sir. I assume you want to board now?" She gestured toward the jet bridge, her words dripping with reluctant courtesy. Oliver's eyes flicked from Monica to Casey, and then he offered Casey a polite nod. "Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for sorting this out." And with that, he followed Monica onto the jet bridge and into the aircraft. Little did Monica know that every frosty word, every condescending glance was being recorded in Oliver's mental notebook. The first-class cabin on an American Airlines Boeing 737 featured plush, reclining leather seats, personal screens, and a more spacious layout than the economy cabin. Monica strode briskly down the aisle, carrying her flight manual and checking overhead bins. Oliver followed at a measured pace, scanning row numbers. He found seat 1C, placed his duffel in the overhead bin, and eased into the seat. Immediately, a junior flight attendant named Carla approached him with a bright smile. She offered a pre-departure beverage, a choice of water, orange juice, or champagne. Oliver asked for water. Carla returned swiftly and handed it over with a warmth that stood in stark contrast to Monica's iciness. Oliver thanked her sincerely. "Appreciate it. Busy day, huh?" Carla nodded, her eyes dancing with the sense of excitement that often accompanies the start of a flight. "Oh yes, it's non-stop, but I love it. If you need anything, let me know. Enjoy your flight, sir." Meanwhile, Monica paused in the galley to consult with her in-flight tablet, verifying the seat assignments and passenger statuses. She was frustrated. Something about Oliver Henderson didn't sit right with her. "He's probably some big shot who manipulated corporate to get a free upgrade," she told herself, ignoring the possibility that there might be a legitimate reason. She rummaged through the beverage cart, finalizing the pre-departure drink orders for the rest of first class, effectively ignoring Oliver for the time being. Once the plane pushed back and soared into the sky, the flight quickly reached its cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign turned off. Monica was in her element now. She began the routine first-class service, offering hot towels, distributing menus, checking if passengers preferred the chicken or pasta entree. Throughout, she maintained her characteristic composure, though each time she approached Oliver's row, there was a flicker of tension. When Monica finally reached Oliver, "May I get you something to drink with dinner, sir?" Her voice was polite, but the courtesy was forced. Oliver chose a simple glass of sparkling water again. "That would be great, thanks." He considered adding something else, perhaps a gentle question about her day, but decided against it. He wanted to observe more than he wanted to challenge her. Besides, he was certain an opportunity to address her attitude would come later. Meanwhile, a series of mild turbulence bumps rattled the cabin. Monica paused, waiting for the overhead seatbelt sign to illuminate. It did. She made an announcement instructing everyone to remain seated. Yet an elderly passenger in 4A stood up, presumably heading to the lavatory. Monica rushed down the aisle to scold him. Her voice clipped. "Sir, I just announced the seatbelt sign is on. You need to remain seated." The passenger, obviously startled, stammered that he urgently needed the restroom. Monica sighed. "Well, fine, just be careful. But next time, you need to wait until the sign is off." Even from seat 1C, Oliver could hear the tension in Monica's voice. He gave Carla a look as she passed by. Carla shrugged apologetically, as if to say, "She's always like this." Oliver wondered how many passengers walked away from flights with negative impressions, not because the airline was inherently bad, but because the face of the airline, its front-line staff, treated them curtly. The flight continued, dinner service commenced, and the mild turbulence eventually eased. Passengers settled into in-flight entertainment, or read newspapers, or drifted off. Oliver perused an American Airlines magazine, feigning interest in the route maps while actually reviewing the day's events. He wanted to see how the remainder of the flight would be handled, especially if there were any irregularities or special requests from passengers. Suddenly, a familiar face appeared in the aisle. Samuel Pierce, American Airlines Director of In-Flight Services, was traveling incognito in economy class. He'd been on the same flight because he had a meeting in LA the following morning. Samuel had spotted Oliver in seat 1C on his way to the restroom. Oliver and Samuel exchanged a knowing look. While the flight attendant staff wouldn't recognize Samuel by face unless they worked in headquarters, Oliver certainly knew him. They'd just finished a board meeting together 2 days earlier. Samuel stepped closer, leaning in subtly to speak so that no one else heard. "Mr. Henderson," he whispered, "surprised to see you here. I was in row 25, but recognized you on the way to the LAV. Are you traveling under the radar?" Oliver gave a silent nod, glancing to ensure Monica was not nearby. "Yes, more or less. Just observing. Keep it to yourself for now." Samuel grinned. "Of course. I'll be quiet. But I'd love to chat when we land." The director headed back toward economy. In that fleeting moment, Oliver felt a sense of relief at having an ally on board who understood the bigger picture. He hoped he wouldn't have to intervene before the flight ended, but he sensed that the tension brewing with Monica might escalate if another conflict arose. Halfway through the flight, the seatbelt sign was off again, and cabin lights were dimmed for passengers to rest. Then came the unmistakable chime of a flight attendant call button, this one from an overhead panel near seat 9B in economy class. Carla and Monica both noticed it. Carla was closer, so she moved swiftly down the aisle. Moments later, Carla's voice wavered over the intercom. "Is there a medical professional on board? We have a passenger in need of assistance." Monica's heart skipped a beat. Medical emergencies were her least favorite part of the job. They introduced real unpredictability into an otherwise well-regimented routine. She grabbed the emergency medical kit from the forward galley and rushed to row 9, where she found a frantic mother cradling a teenager who appeared to be hyperventilating, face pale and sweaty. Carla ushered Monica closer. "He said he's having severe chest pains and trouble breathing," Carla said in a hushed voice. Monica's training kicked in as she began going through the standard emergency protocol. She asked the mother questions about the boy's medical history, allergies, and any prior diagnoses. The mother was too panicked to be coherent. Passengers nearby looked on, some with concern, others with mild curiosity. The boy winced, clutching his chest. "Somebody call for a doctor," the mother pleaded. Oliver, hearing the commotion from the front, stood to see if he could help in any small way. Simultaneously, a middle-aged man from the row behind the teenager stepped forward, introducing himself as an EMT. "I can help if needed," he offered. Monica handed him the stethoscope from the kit, her expression stern but trembling slightly. This was serious. She had encountered a few medical scares in her time, but chest pains in a teenager were rare and alarming. She called up to the cockpit via the intercom, requesting they notify Medlink, a ground-based service that offers medical advice to crew in flight. The pilot's voice crackled back over the handset. "We're getting in touch with Medlink now. Be ready to provide vitals." The EMT, Mr. Robinson, checked the boy's pulse, respiration, and tried to calm him. "He's hyperventilating for sure. Might be a panic attack, but we can't take any chances with chest pain." The mother clutched the boy's hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. Monica took a measured breath, focusing on the procedure. "Carla, get the oxygen tank. Let's administer a low flow to help him breathe more comfortably." Carla nodded and sprinted to the galley. Oliver observed all of this, noticing that Monica, though obviously flustered, was doing her job effectively. She was following protocol. Yet he also sensed the subtle crack in her calm exterior. She was worried, perhaps scared. In that moment, Oliver gained a measure of empathy for her. Under all that rigidity, there was a human being who felt the weight of responsibility. For the next 15 minutes, the tension in the cabin was palpable. Monica and Carla hovered around the boy, monitoring his breathing. The EMT continued giving supportive instructions. The mother clung to her son, pressing a trembling hand against his forehead. Monica carefully relayed the vitals to Medlink, double-checking medication possibilities and potential for an emergency diversion. Eventually, the boy's breathing steadied. His color improved. Medlink, on the phone with the cockpit, advised that if his vitals stabilized, they wouldn't need to divert the plane. They recommended the boy be evaluated by medical personnel upon landing in Los Angeles. But for now, he seemed to be out of immediate danger. As the situation de-escalated, Monica's shoulders relaxed. She exhaled in relief, exchanging a reassuring nod with Carla. The mother thanked them profusely, tears still glistening in her eyes. "Thank you so much," she said, voice quivering. Monica mustered a small smile. "I'm glad he's stable now. Let us know if there's any change." They slowly made their way back to the front. Carla broke the silence first. "Good work back there, Monica. That was intense." Monica nodded, her cool facade returning. "We have protocols for a reason," she said bluntly, as though to mask any sign of vulnerability. "Let's keep an eye on him for the rest of the flight. I'll inform the pilots that he's stable." Oliver overheard this as he stood near the bulkhead, out of the way of other passengers. He waited for Monica to pass by. This time he gave her a quiet nod and said, "You handled that well." She paused, regarding him carefully. For a split second, Oliver thought he saw gratitude in her eyes. Then her defensive shield snapped back. "I'm just doing my job, sir. Please return to your seat." She stepped around him, continuing to the cockpit door. Oliver sighed. There was a moment there, something that hinted at genuine emotion. But it was gone in an instant. He returned to 1C, deciding to let the rest of the flight play out without further interference. The remaining flight was largely uneventful. Carla checked in on the boy a couple more times, and they prepared a medical assistance request so paramedics could meet him at the gate upon arrival. Oliver spent the last hour jotting notes in a small leather notebook he carried. He wrote observations about overall service, the gate confusion, Monica's demeanor, Carla's warmth, and the successful handling of the medical emergency. He concluded with questions. What training do we offer staff to deal with unique upgrade situations? How do we empower employees to check references without being dismissive? Why do some flight attendants treat passengers as inconveniences? Eventually, the plane touched down at LAX. Once at the gate, paramedics boarded first to assist the teenage boy, who, though stable, needed an immediate checkup. Monica supervised the handover, ensuring the mother had all her belongings. Passengers in the first-class cabin stepped off next. Oliver lingered, letting the surge of travelers move ahead. He noticed Monica guiding the paramedics, pointing to row 9. Then she turned and spotted Oliver standing there. Their eyes briefly met. Again, that flicker of something, perhaps curiosity or uncertainty, crossed her features. Oliver offered a polite smile and stepped aside to let them pass. Monica, ever professional, turned back to her duties. Probably just another pushy passenger who got an upgrade, she mused. She had no inkling that the man she had been so curt to was actually her new boss. The next morning, LAX was buzzing with early travelers as corporate offices at the airport's administration wing opened. Monica had no flight assignment that day. She was scheduled for recurrent training in the LA crew base. She'd be spending the next few hours attending lectures on safety, service protocols, and brand standards. Usually this was a routine refresher. Today, however, whispers ran rampant among flight attendants that something big was happening. A new CEO was rumored to be in town, conducting meetings and possibly evaluating staff. After signing in at a kiosk and receiving her ID badge for the day, Monica made her way to a large conference room. She found a seat near the middle of the room, flipping through the day's schedule. 0800-0900, corporate update with Oliver Henderson, CEO. Monica's jaw tightened slightly. She had heard about this new executive. She recalled the rumors that he sometimes traveled incognito to get an unfiltered sense of operations. She doubted she'd ever encounter him personally. After all, CEOs typically kept their distance from day-to-day staff. At precisely 8 a.m., the double doors at the front of the conference room swung open. In walked Samuel Pierce, the director of in-flight services, and behind him, that passenger. Monica's eyes widened, heart thudding in her chest. She recognized Oliver Henderson immediately. He wore a tailored suit instead of jeans and sneakers, but there was no mistaking him. The passenger who'd tried to get an upgrade and had caused all that confusion, he was the new CEO? A hush fell over the crowd of flight attendants, a mix of anticipation and reverence. Oliver took the microphone after Samuel introduced him. He began by thanking everyone for their commitment, remarking on how proud he was to lead American Airlines into the future. He spoke about safety, about the new customer experience initiatives they wanted to roll out. Then, in a measured tone, he told a story from the day before. He recounted how he had boarded a flight from DFW to LAX in coach class, incognito. He described a gate confusion regarding his upgrade, referencing no names, only the scenario. The hush in the room deepened. Monica felt blood rush to her face, certain that anyone who looked her way could see the guilt. Oliver explained how some crew members responded by going the extra mile, verifying instructions, eventually granting him the seat. He praised how the airline handled a mid-flight medical emergency, calling it textbook. Then, carefully, he shifted tone, describing how certain staff interactions left him feeling dismissed and unwelcome when he tried to clarify his upgrade request. "This is not the brand experience we want to deliver," he said, scanning the room. "We want each passenger, whether they have 1,000,000 miles with us or it's their first time flying, to feel respected and heard. We must handle special requests, irregular situations, and yes, even last-minute corporate notes with grace and thoroughness." Monica felt as though her entire body was vibrating with anxiety. Her mind raced. Does he know it was me? Of course he does. She stared at the floor, wishing she could vanish, her earlier confidence gone. She had prided herself on upholding the rules, but perhaps her manner had lacked empathy. As Oliver concluded his address, thunderous applause erupted from most in attendance. Some flight attendants seemed genuinely inspired. Others, like Monica, clapped nervously, hearts pounding. Oliver stepped off the dais, disappearing into a side hallway with Samuel. Meanwhile, Monica and others gathered their belongings for the next portion of training. She barely had a moment to process what she'd just heard when a staff coordinator approached her. "Monica Webb?" the coordinator asked, scanning the room. Monica lifted her hand. "Yes?" "You've been asked to go to conference room 3B at 9:30 a.m. for a follow-up meeting. Director Pierce and Mr. Henderson would like to speak with you." Monica's mouth went dry. "Oh, sure, thank you." As the coordinator walked away, a wave of dread rolled through Monica. This is it, she thought. I'm about to be fired. She recalled every borderline remark she'd made to Oliver the day before, each time she'd refused to double-check his request. Had she sealed her fate? The rest of the morning's training sessions passed in a blur. She couldn't focus on the safety demonstration slides or the updated policy bulletins. Her mind replayed each interaction with Oliver, searching for some salvageable explanation she might offer. At exactly 9:30 a.m., Monica pushed open the door to conference room 3B. She was greeted by a small table, around which sat Oliver Henderson, Samuel Pierce, and an HR representative named Rebecca Chen. A single chair opposite them awaited her. The space felt heavy with significance, like a courtroom or a principal's office for a nervous student. Monica took her seat, folding her hands in her lap. Her usually perfect posture felt rigid. Oliver, for his part, wore a calm expression, nothing too severe. It was Samuel who spoke first. "Monica, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time. We wanted to talk about yesterday's flight, and also to hear your perspective on how everything played out." She swallowed. "Of course. Thank you for inviting me." She managed to keep her voice steady, though her stomach clenched. Oliver leaned forward, clasping his hands on the table. "Monica, let me say, I recognize that you performed your safety responsibilities well. During the medical emergency, you followed protocol. That's commendable. At the same time, we had a situation at the gate regarding my upgrade. I want to hear from you what happened there. Monica felt every muscle tighten. Mr. Henderson, first let me apologize if I came off as rude. I was operating on the information I had. I saw no official note about your upgrade, and from my perspective, many passengers claim corporate or VIP status when it isn't legitimate. Oliver nodded. I understand that, but I want you to walk me through how you handled it, step by step. Did you try to verify with the gate agent or your in-flight system? Monica's throat felt parched. I checked our manifest. I didn't see any mention of your seat assignment in first class, and we were fully booked up there, so I assumed it wasn't possible to seat you. It seemed like a done deal. In my attempt to keep the boarding process smooth, I might have been less accommodating than I could have been. Samuel jumped in gently. Monica, the problem isn't just about me or Oliver or the specific seat. It's that if a passenger politely says they have a note from corporate or any special circumstance, we have procedures to confirm it. We always have to double-check with the gate agent or the system. In this case, Casey at the gate desk was able to find the note, but you seemed hesitant to explore that possibility, at least from what Oliver described. She lowered her eyes. I see that now. At the time, I felt I was just protecting first-class seats for those who had the right to them. It's an issue we deal with a lot. People try to sneak into seats they didn't pay for. Maybe I've grown a little cynical. That's no excuse, though. Rebecca Chen, the HR representative, gave Monica a reassuring nod. It's good you acknowledge that. So from a corporate standpoint, we want to ensure all frontline staff remain open, polite, and thorough. We know the job can be stressful, but the impression you leave on each passenger is critical. Oliver watched Monica's reaction. She looked genuinely remorseful. I also noted your attitude during the flight. You were professional in service, but the courtesy aspect was overshadowed by a strictness that some might find off-putting. Has anyone spoken to you before about your manner with passengers? Monica's cheeks reddened slightly. I've had performance evaluations that mention I'm somewhat rigid. I interpret the rules strictly, and sometimes that's worked well for me, but I realize it can come across as cold. Oliver let a silence hang in the air before he spoke again. Monica, we are not here to fire you or to shame you. I want to be clear, you handled the emergency admirably, and your knowledge of procedures is strong. But we do need to address how you interact with passengers. You have the potential to be a great representative of American Airlines. If you could pair your attention to detail with a warmth and willingness to solve passenger problems, you'd excel. Monica exhaled shakily, relief and anxiety mixing. I appreciate the honesty, sir. I truly do. I want to improve. This is my dream job, and the last thing I want is to tarnish the airline's image or lose my position. Samuel exchanged a glance with Oliver, then addressed Monica. We want to offer you additional training both in conflict resolution and in customer service approach. You'll be paired with a mentor flight attendant for a series of flights. We also want to keep an eye on your progress. Is that something you're open to? Monica nodded quickly. Yes, absolutely. I'm open to any training or mentoring. I want to do better. Oliver gave a small, approving smile. That's good to hear. I'd like to see you in action again in a few weeks, maybe do another flight check. This time, I hope to see that the lessons have been taken to heart. Because the truth is, we need dedicated staff who can adapt to every passenger's needs. Monica's posture eased. The tension in the room seemed to dissipate, replaced by a sense of possibility. She couldn't believe she was receiving a second chance. It felt like the floor had been taken out from under her when she recognized Oliver Henderson, but now it seemed she might pivot this into a lesson that could ultimately help her become a better professional and a better person. For many employees, the fear of being fired loomed large when confronted with wrongdoing, especially when that wrongdoing concerned the CEO himself. In some sense, Monica's karma had come swiftly in the form of this confrontation. Yet ironically, it wasn't total destruction, it was more nuanced. She was forced to confront the negative aspects of her behavior, her dismissal of legitimate passenger concerns, her tendency to treat policy as an unbreakable barrier rather than a guideline to help her serve people. She left that meeting under no illusions that everything was fine. She had a formal note in her file now that outlined the necessity of improving passenger interaction. She'd have to undergo extended training, possibly delaying her ambition for a managerial role. In the short term, her pride was bruised. Colleagues who heard whispers of the incident gave her sympathetic or smug looks, depending on their prior relationship with her. Some found satisfaction that Monica, who had once lectured them about small mistakes, was now humbled. Others felt genuine sympathy, offering a supportive ear. Indeed, she felt the sting of that hard karma she'd always believed in. Treat others poorly, and it comes back to you in a big way. In the days that followed, Monica found herself grappling with self-reflection she had long avoided. Her personal life had always been overshadowed by her career ambitions. She replayed her flight interactions in her mind, from the moment Oliver approached her at the gate to the second she dismissed him. She recalled how she'd responded to passengers over the years, those she labelled difficult or entitled. At home in her small apartment, she studied the new training modules the airline sent her. She read about emotional intelligence, how to communicate with empathy, how to put herself in the passenger's shoes. It felt alien at first. She had always prided herself on efficiency and procedure, not on coddling customers. But as she read stories of passenger experiences, especially those who felt ignored or belittled, she recognized traces of her own behavior in the negative examples. One afternoon, as she walked to a coffee shop near LAX for her break, her phone buzzed. An email from Carla. It read, "Hey Monica, hope you're holding up. Heard about the meeting. I just want you to know, despite everything, I've seen your good side. I remember on that flight to Chicago when you comforted that unaccompanied minor who was scared. You do have it in you to be compassionate. If you need a friend to talk to, I'm here." Monica smiled softly at the reminder. She'd forgotten about that flight. She had, on occasion, shown a warmer side. Maybe I can recapture that part of myself, she thought. 3 weeks later, Monica returned to full flight duty, now accompanied by a mentor flight attendant named Patrice. With 12 years of experience and a reputation for balancing procedure with genuine warmth, Patrice was the perfect guide. Before each flight, Patrice would quietly remind Monica, "We're in the people business first. The plane is just our office." Monica found herself adopting new strategies. She made a point to greet each passenger with a personal acknowledgement, to actually listen when someone expressed a worry or problem. The first few flights felt awkward, almost stilted, but gradually she felt the mechanics of empathy become more natural. She discovered small joys in connecting with passengers, like the time a nervous flyer almost backed out of the flight, until Monica patiently reassured him of the plane's safety record. Eventually the day came for her follow-up flight with none other than Oliver Henderson on board, this time from LAX to Chicago O'Hare. Word reached Monica that the CEO might be traveling that day, possibly even on her flight. Normally that knowledge would have sent her into a panic. Instead, she took a breath and reminded herself, just treat him like any other passenger politely, with respect, going above and beyond if needed. When Oliver boarded, this time with a confirmed first-class ticket, Monica greeted him at the door. She offered her usual smile, but let genuine warmth flicker in her eyes. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. Great to see you again. Can I help you find your seat?" Oliver smiled gently. "Thank you, Monica. I can manage." During the flight, Monica offered him a beverage with the same sincerity she showed other passengers. She resolved not to hover, but to be attentive. Oliver noticed the shift. When dinner service began, Monica approached, verifying his meal choice. She asked if there was anything else he needed, and when he said he was fine, she let him be no hostility, just professionalism. Halfway through the flight, Oliver discreetly observed how she interacted with a family traveling in first class with a fidgety toddler. Rather than telling them, "Keep your child in control," Monica knelt down, used a small sticker kit from her own carry-on, and offered the child a quick distraction, explaining that it often helped keep little ones calm. The parents, relieved, thanked her profusely. Oliver felt a genuine warmth for the airline he led. This is the future we need: flight attendants who care enough to adapt. When the plane landed in Chicago, Oliver said a personal farewell to Monica. "Thank you for the wonderful flight," he said. "I see a marked difference from the first time we met." Monica blushed slightly, but kept her composure. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson. I appreciate the chance to improve." He gave a small nod. "Keep up the good work. I'll be watching your progress, in a good way." He offered a quick handshake, which she accepted. This time the handshake was warm and respectful, a world away from the icy exchange weeks prior. Over the following months, Monica's journey continued. The airline's leadership had a renewed focus on genuine customer service, and Monica became something of a quiet success story. She still believed in rules and procedures, she still ensured that seats were correctly assigned and safety standards were paramount, but she also learned to approach each passenger with empathy, to calmly investigate special requests rather than dismiss them. Carla and Patrice noticed that she was much easier to work with. Junior colleagues no longer feared her scoldings. She even apologized to a few co-workers she'd previously reported for minor infractions, admitting she could have handled things differently. Word reached Oliver of Monica's steady transformation. Though he had many other responsibilities, it pleased him to see that the small fiasco had led to genuine growth. In time, with improved performance evaluations under her belt, Monica began to pursue the leadership track again, but this time with a more balanced mindset. She wanted to lead not through fear or rigid enforcement, but through guidance, empathy, and a commitment to high standards, tempered by respect for passengers and fellow crew members. Her career trajectory shifted as well. During an in-flight service manager vacancy, she applied and was accepted largely because her supervisors saw that she had overcome her earlier rigidity. She was tested with a flight from JFK to London, supervising a team of 5 flight attendants, where she demonstrated both skill and compassion. The feedback from that flight was glowing. Oliver, for his part, continued traveling incognito from time to time, ensuring that front-line service consistently improved. He kept the focus on training, morale, and technology upgrades that made verifying seat assignments and corporate notes more seamless, so fewer misunderstandings would occur in the first place. In the end, the story of Monica Webb, the flight attendant who once refused to let an undercover CEO board first class, became something of an internal anecdote at American Airlines. New hires heard cautionary whispers about the day the CEO was turned away and how the flight attendant involved had turned the situation into a chance to grow. Karma had indeed played its part. Monica faced the consequences of her stern attitude, but she also discovered a path to redemption. She realized that while procedures and rules were vital, they should never eclipse the human side of the job. Through dedicated effort and a willingness to change, she not only kept her dream job, but elevated herself to a higher level of responsibility, becoming a leader who could guide others away from the mistakes she once made. Sitting in her apartment one evening, reflecting on her journey, Monica felt gratitude. Gratitude that Oliver Henderson had shown her the consequences of her actions, but also gratitude that he and the airline gave her a second chance. As she sipped a mug of tea, she scrolled through passenger feedback from her latest flight. Amid the usual comments about comfortable seats and quality meals, one passenger wrote, "Special thanks to Monica, she turned what might have been a stressful flight into a pleasant experience. She really listened." Monica smiled. She finally understood that beyond the polished uniform and impeccably styled hair, her true role was to serve and care for the people who flew with her. And in that realization, she found not only redemption, but genuine fulfillment.